Hello, hello. We're still waiting for people to get in here, and we still got 9 minutes. I'm just starting these early because it takes a while to get everything going. All right. So we got all the links set. There we go. Hopefully, this time I'll be able to edit the stream. Everybody who took this later had to had to skip through 10, 15 minutes in the intro. All right, we got more people coming in. Go ahead and just say hello so I get your names in there. Grading has been updated. Yesterday I felt terrible, so I didn't get anything done. But today, feeling good. Almost normal. So tomorrow, I should be ready. Hello, hello. While we're waiting, I'll just zoom in on some of the interesting data from sleep. So if you have questions, you think of anything, you can write them down. I'll try to get to all the questions today. I think I got all of them the other day. We got 5 minutes, 6 minutes, so I'll just be talking, waiting. While we're waiting, does anybody have a class where they're on Zoom? I guess what I'm really wondering is Zoom a better way to do this than YouTube? With Zoom, I don't have the same control over the screen switching. It's very complicated. Well, it's not that complicated, but it's not as easy versus doing it through the streaming platform. I use OBS, if anybody's interested. I don't know why you would be, but if anybody does have a class that uses Zoom, what's your opinion? Does Zoom work better because then you can talk? Or does YouTube work better because I don't know why it would, I guess. If you have thoughts, let me know. If not, just keep hanging out. Okay, nice. Good to have some feedback there. We got some more people coming in. And some people were getting kicked off of YouTube last time, so, well, not kicked off. I don't know what was happening. So maybe that makes it more difficult. But so far, from the 2 comments, it doesn't seem like this setup is terrible. Let's get you to another screen here just to see some more cool stuff while we wait. We still got 4 minutes here. Okay, nice. Thanks for the info. I kind of agree, but sometimes I'm used to my ways and I have no idea what the younger generation likes. I did have somebody recommend that I get on TikTok and start making TikTok videos, like 2-minute videos, but I just hate social media. I got to get better at it, but hello. Welcome, everybody. We still got some minutes here. And I think I got a better setup. Things are looking pretty good right now. All right. Hello, we got lots of people coming in. Okay, there we go. Now things are updating. All right, now that we're getting more people in here, I'm just taking some questions, or just asking some questions so I can get an idea. For the new people here, do you have any Zoom classes or online classes? And then I'm just curious, is Zoom better for the setup? Do you like that more, or does YouTube work better, or does it not really matter? What are your thoughts? YouTube is easier for me. You know, if you've been here, I'm just a broken record, but YouTube's easier for me than Zoom with the ability to switch screens. We got 2 more minutes. We'll go to the other sleep deprivation while we wait. You can check those things out. Kind of unfortunate, all the things that sleep helps, because I don't know, I don't like to sleep. Well, I do like to sleep when I'm tired, but I don't like to go to sleep. All right, cool. Seems like both work pretty well. All right. Hello. People are still coming in. And grading worked great. Sorry I didn't get your grades up the last 2 days, but I got them up today, and I'll get our grading up right after class today. It worked really well. So we'll do the same thing. That way, if you're here, you don't need to take your notes. You just participate. And it worked pretty easy. I just took a bunch of screenshots, threw them all up on my little whiteboard thing, and I just went through, and if you participated, I crossed your name out, and I got you your grade. So, and everybody did really good, really great, participating, commenting. So I was very impressed. So nice work. I'm behind on grading, but so far with the grading that I've seen, you all are doing really well. So you might be my best class ever. All right, good feedback, everybody. Thank you. We got 1 more minute, and then we'll probably wait another minute just to make sure everybody gets in on there. Let's see, and there is a delay, so by the time you're hearing this, it'll probably be noon. So here's another question, and don't worry, I don't really care what you want here, but so you're not going to hurt my feelings or anything. But we had a lot of interest in investing, more so than I've ever had before. So another question is, would you like me to live stream, and then you can show up and just ask more individual questions? So it wouldn't be required, wouldn't be a class, and we'd do this tomorrow, so Thursday. And then if you would like that, just say, you don't need to say if you would attend, but if you did want to do that, what time would you suggest a live stream at? And if there's enough people that want to do it, I might stream tomorrow, more on investing. And then since there'll only be maybe 3 or 4 people in there, or maybe more, we could talk a little bit more. And I'm just giving it a little bit more time until we actually get started for people to log in if we're having any issues. So far, we seem good. All right, and again, if you're just joining, say hello so I get your name in there. All right, and since we're on a delay, things are a little tough for me here. So what we're going to do next is let's talk about sleep. We're talking about sleep already. How many hours of sleep did you get last night? Let's hit up the chat with hours of sleep, and then we'll get going here. Hours of sleep, how many did you get last night? Nice, we got lots of people joining right now. Oh, nice, we're doing good. especially after that first class, probably, when I showed you all the terrible things about a lack of sleep down here. Yeah, sometimes you don't get great sleep, but that's okay. I got good sleep last night, the night before. You know when you're sick and you just can't sleep, but you really need sleep? It's not a fun time. Can't breathe, can't sleep. All right, we're 2 minutes in. I think we're ready to start. So, one quick thing, when I was trying to buy shares and show you guys what that looked like for yesterday's class, the reason why that wasn't showing up is because the market was closed, right? The market closes at 2:30 our time, which is like, what time is it? 4:30 Eastern time. So just to update you all, if you did want to put $50 into Fidelity or whatever platform, and you wanted to buy $50 of the S&P 500 or just buying part of a share, you can definitely do that. So that is a thing. The problem was it was after 2:30, so my trades wouldn't execute until the next day. So that's kind of an interesting thing. All right, so we're talking about sleep. We were looking at the sleep cycles here. And remember, we have this deep sleep. And this isn't 100% correct because sleep is very complex. But a good way to think about it is the early stages of sleep is like healing your body, kind of. So you go into those right away. And then the REM cycles of sleep, you can think about those as in consolidating memories, learning habits, right? So we talked about how REM sleep helps you learn more. And as you sleep later, the more learning occurs, or well, the longer the REM cycles, which then potentially the more learning occurs. But REM sleep or dreaming have some interesting things. So one of the interesting things about dreaming is, well, there's some theories about why do we need to dream. And it is clear that dreaming is necessary for humans. And if you look at studies looking at children in particular, there's some main things that children dream about. And those two things are, one, wild animals, and two, unknown males, right? And so you might think, well, why would kids particularly dream about those things? And there's this theory about dreaming. And the theory is that dreaming actually helps us with like threat reduction or dealing with threat, right? And so you may have experienced this in your own life where something's been really bothering you or you're concerned about something and it starts showing up in your dreams or something like that. And what may be happening during REM sleep is your brain may be like running through different cycles, trying to run through scenarios where, okay, this is a dangerous scenario. How are we going to react? This is a dangerous scenario. How are we going to react? And so one of the things you might notice is if there's something particular bothering your dream, that might be because you perceive it as a threat. And there's actually some psychologists who would suggest if there's something bothering you in your dream, if like, especially in children, if there's a reoccurring nightmare, you can ask them like, well, how do you solve the problem? Right. So it's like, I did this with my niece once just to test it out. She had this terrible dream. She was falling. She couldn't stop falling, right? She was just falling through pillows, she said, right? And it was terrifying her. So I asked, okay, well, what could you do about that? And she thinks, and she's like, well, I could get a ladder, right? And, her nightmare actually stopped after that. So that doesn't mean that's what fixed it, but that was kind of interesting. And that's a technique that is sometimes used. So dreaming, super important, might be helpful in threat reduction, which is kind of interesting. Let's hit up the chat and sleep paralysis. And again, we're going to hide the chat when this goes live or once I post this. So sleep paralysis. Has anybody ever experienced sleep paralysis? And then just kind of share your thoughts, whatever you feel comfortable sharing, so the chat can kind of see what's up with the sleep paralysis. And while we're waiting, because there is a lag, sleep paralysis is when you wake up and you can't move. And a lot of times people actually are hallucinating during this. So has anybody ever experienced this? And how did it feel? Was it terrifying? Did you see anything? What are your thoughts? Okay, good. We got lots of no's. There's got to be some yeses in here because usually there is. There we go. Yes, you think? Okay. Yeah, okay. So some of us have experienced it. So so let's talk about what's happening there. So when you're dreaming during REM sleep, your brain is very active. And what actually happens is your body kind of paralyzes itself. So you can't get up and act your dreams out. Because if you imagine we were all running around in our, acting out our dreams, the world would be chaos. Like none of us would survive. So kind of an interesting thing. And then what happens is something may go wrong. And what happens is you kind of become alert, but you're still dreaming, but your body can't move because you're still in that REM phase. Yeah, okay. So short moments. Yep. You can't move your body. Yeah, thought someone was standing in the hallway because you sleep with your door. Yeah, it can be a very terrifying thing. I used to have a friend who had terrible sleep paralysis. He would wake up and his bedroom didn't have rafters, but he would see like old attic rafters, and he just saw like a shadowy figure, demon type thing staring down at him, right? And he just couldn't move. So it can be very terrifying. So it's just a good thing to be aware of, right? If you are having sleep paralysis, that's what's going on because your body's kind of paralyzing itself so you don't wake up and run around the world terrorizing everything. So yeah, very terrifying, right? So, okay, an interesting thing about dreaming. I like to talk about those things. In this class, we can't go super deep into topics. So part of it is just bringing up interesting things so that you're aware of. One more thing, what's it called? When you can control your dreams. Does anybody ever become aware that they're dreaming? Lucid dreaming, that's what it's called. Anybody ever lucid dream out there before? No worries. We had some technical difficulties. I'll get you all in here. I take pictures of all the comments. So lucid dreaming is the question. Have you done it? What are your thoughts? And if you keep commenting, I'll make sure I get everybody. Yeah, we had some technical difficulties. All right. Hello. Oh, lots of us have lucid dream where we become aware of our dream and then we can run around and do what we want. Okay, well, while they're coming in, it's kind of interesting. So people actually practice this, and what you can do is you can train yourself. So one of the things that people do to train themselves is they'll create a habit in the real world, like looking at their hands and just observing their hands. And if you do that enough in the real world, you may do that in your dream. And what will happen in your dream is you look down at your hands, and all of a sudden you'll see your hands are all kind of messed up. And then you can be like, hey, wait a second, I'm dreaming. So I used to try to do this, and I would wake up. I couldn't really do it very well. So for me, whenever I'm becoming aware of my dreams is when I have to go to the bathroom. So, and then I wake up, and I'm like, oh, we got to go to the bathroom. Okay, yep, good stuff there. Yeah, so some of us, we had some issues. No worries. You're here now. As long as you're participating, I'll get you in there for credit. So, all right, so lucid dreaming, kind of interesting as well. If you're interested, you can look more into that. So we were talking about the importance of sleep deprivation. Sleep is kind of how we learn things. It may help us reduce our risk perception or threat reduction. And then it's really good for our health on every level: mental health, physical health, cognitive health, immune function, right, which is really important with COVID. And actually, I was getting terrible sleep last week because I was working too much, and then I got sick. So, all right, we talked about circadian rhythms. Let's think about this again. So again, your body cycles with the sun rising and the sun falling. And one of the things that we want to do is create a routine or a good sleeping routine so that we sync ourselves with the circadian rhythm. Nice. More of us are getting in here. We're finding the links. That's good. All right. So one of the things that's really interesting is when you first wake up in the morning, if you're looking at this, see this red line here? This is a cortisol spike. So cortisol spikes, a lot of people talk about cortisol being a stress hormone, which, yes, it can be, but cortisol in some aspects is good. And because right here, this spike in the morning, it actually makes you alert. So if you're trying to think about timing your coffee in the morning, because I do get lots of questions on this, is you typically want to wait until after your cortisol spike. So what I tend to do is I try to wait to drink coffee 2 hours after I wake up because you can use this cortisol spike. And one of the things that helps this cortisol spike is going outside in the morning. So what I've been doing is when I wake up and when the sun is first coming up, I'll go for a 10-minute walk in the morning just to kind of alert myself and try and set my circadian rhythm. And if you set a time to wake up routinely enough, then you will be good to, or then you will start to create some habits and start waking up at the same time, start going to bed at the same time, all that good stuff. So, oh, nice. All right, we had some problems with the links. People are coming in here. Well, you're here now, so we're good. let's make sure we have some notebooks because we're going to do some things in there real quick. So if you need to go and grab something, piece of paper, something like that, we're going to do a sleep schedule here in a second. We're going to do a little practice thing here. What we're going to do next is talk about sleep disorders. So we talked about insomnia. This is just difficulty falling asleep. Drugs interrupt this, so alcohol and marijuana. If you don't have that circadian rhythm down, then that'll be a problem. Stress, worry can keep us up, right? So some cognitive behavioral therapy, teaching yourself to control your thoughts and like not let them run control over you. And then we're going to talk about some screen time regulation, sleep schedule, all that stuff. We were just about to talk about sleep apnea. So let's go in the chat. I see a lot of you just found the link. Let's go in the chat and let's just have anybody experienced sleep apnea, or do they know anybody who's experienced sleep apnea? Sleep apnea is when your breathing is interrupted for at least 10 seconds. And essentially what you're doing is you're waking up, then you're going back to sleep. Then you're waking up, and what the issue with this is it doesn't allow you to fall into those deeper sleep cycles. So, for instance, I knew a person that I used to work with. He went to the hospital. So let's say you think you have sleep apnea. He went in. It's called a sleep study. You sleep in the hospital for a night. They hook up all these things, measure your brain waves, and you actually, they measured him, and he was waking up like 1,000 times a night, right? So he wasn't getting any of his sleep cycles. All right. People's family has it. Yeah, okay. So we know lots of people. And it tends to be a thing that happens as you get older a lot of times, and there are a few reasons for that. So it's kind of interesting. There's a few things that tend to cause it. Well, first of all, 1 out of 15 people tend to have sleep apnea. Let's do this. All right. And what's basically happening is your throat or your tongue is blocking your airway. So snoring is a big risk factor. We need to get this smaller here. So snoring is actually a big risk factor for sleep apnea. So if you snore a lot, like my friend actually does, that might be a sign you have sleep apnea. Some risk factors here are being overweight. The problem with being overweight is it can put extra pressure on your throat neck area, and that can cause the airway to collapse or like not be as open, and that can increase your risk of sleep apnea as well. Smoking, same kind of deal. Oh, there we go. It inflames the throat area, and that can cause some issues. We got alcohol use, same situation. This one's kind of interesting. Just being over 40 tends to increase risk of sleep apnea. And somebody asked about tonsils last week, and there it is. So yeah, overly sized tonsils and overbite, or just having a large neck or tongue can increase your risk. So sometimes it's kind of unfortunate. Has anybody known anybody with sleep apnea who got treatment for it or had a CPAP device? CPAP device is basically a mask you have to wear, and it pressurizes your throat area so that it keeps your airway open. So my friend that I was talking about who's waking up thousands of times a night, he actually got a CPAP device and slept with it, and he started looking so much better. Like, he was starting to look old, and he was like, I don't know, 3 years older than me, and it was kind of like, yeah, kind of interesting. So, yep. Okay, so we got people who wear the mask. Yeah, it's not the best thing in the world. You know, hopefully someday. I've seen people use a certain like mouth device that they can put in that might help like keep the tongue in the right location. But yeah, you know, if that's where you're at and you need to use it, it's better to get sleep than to not get sleep. So yeah, my dad, unfortunately, he probably's got sleep apnea, and he's just like, I'm not wearing a stupid mask, you know, but that's because he's a stubborn old man, you know. So I don't know if you'd like me calling him old, but, you know, compared to me. So, oh yeah, alcohol, smoking, all that stuff. Okay, so these are some disorders, and you can get help for this, right? So insomnia, if you're really having a hard time, therapy can help with that. You can get some cognitive behavior therapy if it's anxiety or thoughts keeping you awake. There's some other things, you know, like personally, sometimes when your brain's going a little too much, I'll just listen to a podcast. You don't want a screen making it bright, but I'll just listen to a podcast very quietly to kind of help me, you know, not have that stress. So you got to find what works for you. All right, good comments. All right, so let's actually make a sleep schedule. So what I want you to do, if you have a notebook somewhere, is let's scroll out here. Let's do this. So what I want you to do is we're gonna make Let's go Monday. I want a bigger pencil for that. Let's go there. So we got Monday, Tuesday, and you can draw the same thing. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I'm running out of room, Saturday, Sunday. All right. So you're going to write that out. And then what I want you to do is I want you to think about what's the earliest time you have to wake up on Monday. So for me, because I have a pretty routine schedule, the earliest time, let's see here. The earliest I need to be in the lab is 7 a.m. So I need to wake up at least by 6:30 a.m. No. Yeah. Okay, so 6:30 a.m., right? And this is every day. So this is the earliest time I need to wake up. And then what you're going to do is you're going to write 6:30 a.m. across the board, right? So that's for me. So you're going to do this for yourself. So the earliest you ever have to wake up all week, right? So some of you, maybe let's say you work at 5:30 or something like that, 5:30 a.m. You might need to wake up at 4:30 a.m. So you're going to write that the same time all the way across the week. You can write this wherever you want, but this wouldn't be a bad thing to put in your life vision section, so you can definitely write it there. But you can put it wherever you want in your notebook. And then once you think about the first time you wake up, or the earliest you need to wake up, you're going to write that all the way across the board. And then once you have that, because I'm on a leg, we're going to just move to the next section. You're going to count 8 hours backwards. So 6:30 for me, that's going to be, well, noon would be 6.5 hours. Or midnight, would be 6.5 hours. And then I would go to 11:30 to be 7 hours. So then we're at 10:30 for 8 hours. Okay. So now I'm at 10:30 for 8 hours. And the thing is, so that would be when I need to start sleeping, right? So then I need to sleep by 10:30. But I don't know about you, but when I lay in bed, I don't pass out right away. It takes me like an hour typically to be able to fall asleep. So that means I need to be in bed at about 9:30 p.m. And we want to prep for bed about 2 to 3 hours prior. So I need to start prepping for bed about 7:30 p.m. at the latest. Very unfortunate. So what I want you to do once you have these numbers is let's type in when do you have to wake up, and then when do you need to get in bed. So what's your wake up time? Make sure you put AM, and then in bed, not to sleep, in bed PM time. And then what are your thoughts? Does this seem overwhelming? Are you like, oh no, this kind of sucks? What are your thoughts there? And let's see what we come up with. It might take you a while, but we're going to give you a minute to fill that out. So you're figuring out when you got to wake up, earliest time for the week, because we want to keep some consistency here. Because that's how we develop a sleep routine. Get your circadian rhythm synced up. And then once you get your time, does it seem reasonable? Does it seem unreasonable? What are your thoughts there? All right. Nice. We're getting our hours in. So to me, I don't like going to bed till like midnight or 1, but unfortunately, that doesn't work for my schedule. So once you get your hours, what are your thoughts? Does this seem reasonable? Does this seem unreasonable? Wow, a lot of you have to wake up pretty early. I'm jealous. Right there, Taylor, having to wake up at 9:30. So for me, this just seems so early, I just can't even stand it. But a lot of you seem to be pretty good at this. So yeah, Tara, I feel you on that, right? It's just so hard to go to bed that early. As you get older, maybe it'll get easier. Yeah, right. All these health consequences seem to get exaggerated as you get older. And you're going to, uh-oh. There we go. We're back. All right. So we kind of got a sleep schedule down there. Seems like most of us have reasonable. Some of you are like, there's no way. I understand that. So, all right, we got the sleep schedule down. Let's take a look at what we should do to prepare for bedtime. So this preparation phase right here, for me, it starts about 7:30. So what are some things we want to start doing here? Where am I at? All right. So first thing we want to do is you're going to have your computer. You're going to have your phones, whatever you do. And the first thing is we have blue light that comes out in our screens. And blue light is kind of interesting. It like kind of keeps you alert. So that circadian rhythm is a part in your eyes that detects sunlight. Really interesting side fact. Even people who are blind, they still can have the part in their eye that detects sunlight, and they can still have circadian rhythms. If that part is damaged, though, the part that detects sunlight, people have a very difficult time with life because they don't actually sync up with the sun falling and the sun rising. So what you kind of want to do is sync up your lifestyle to a circadian rhythm type lifestyle, right? So your screens have blue light. I'm going to actually, let me switch this over here. I'm going to actually show you how to do this. Let's go there. Let me switch this over to my desktop here. All right, so we see this. What I'm going to do is, how do I do this? Let's go to, if you have a Windows, you can type in, let's just type in light. Night light is what it's called. If you have a Mac, it's called night shift. So you can go to the start menu and type that. If you have your phone, because you can still do this while you're listening to me. Go to night light, and I'm going to show you what this looks like. So if I turn this on now, you're going to watch my screen become yellow, right? So basically what I did is I'm taking the blue light out of this, and this will help my brain start to release melatonin to make me tired at night. So when people are asking a lot about melatonin, you can try to signal your own melatonin. So I'm going to turn that off. So again, Mac would be night shift. Let me close this out. I'll switch you back here so you can see this. So go ahead and let's figure out how we can set this. And you can actually set a timer. Oh, that's what I wanted to show you. So this is actually my little cue to go to bed and to start preparing for bed. So night shift. Let me pull this over so that you can see this. We got our screens here. Boom. Shift you back over here. So this is night shift. I got mine set for 9. Oh, yeah, and I need to start preparing for bed at 9:30. So at 9 a.m., my screen automatically turns red. And so that's like my cue to like, hey, you better start getting ready for bed. I also turn off the lights above, and I turn on some lamps to make my environment a little bit darker. So that's kind of a good technique. Again, night shift for Apple. Or on your phone settings, you go to display and then night light or night shift. And I got it on my phone as well. I got it on my iPad. So if you want, I would suggest you go through and do that right now on all your devices. Set it up on a timer for your sleep schedule that you made, and that's already a good step for you to start improving your sleep cycles and improving your circadian rhythm. So, all right, we got that there. Let's close that out. Let's bring it back here. All right, so that's your screens. Let's think about your ideal sleep life. So we just talked about lights. So conditioning, this is like kind of you just training yourself. So some people out there say you should only plan on sleeping in your bed, because what happens is your body reacts to environments based on what you typically do in those environments. So let's say that you get in bed and then you watch lots of Netflix, right? What your brain tends to do is it says, oh, we're getting in bed. It's time to watch Netflix. It's not time to go to sleep. So this is a really hard thing to do, to only sleep in your bed. I understand that. But that is a tip and a skill that some people use. We also have decreasing body temperature. So it turns out that if you sleep at a cooler body temp, you tend to get better sleep and maybe go to sleep faster potentially. So some people actually buy like pads that they can put under their bed, and it actually makes the bed a cooler temperature. There's this company called Sleep 8. They're trying to make a bed that's a whole sleep environment. Someday, when I'm rich, I'm going to buy one of these beds. They're like $3,000. So won't be doing that anytime soon. Well, maybe. We'll see what happens. So, but yeah, kind of an interesting thing. There's another thing called a chili pad that you can put under your sheets that'll decrease your body temperature. So that's something to think about. In the summers, my body, I don't know, I just get really hot. So I'll go take a cold shower before I go to bed. That can kind of work. So we talked about the circadian rhythms. if you get a cycle down, things tend to sync up really well. Like for me now, I just start waking up at 6 or 5:45, just kind of naturally. And then this guy's name is Marcus Aurelius. He was a Roman, I believe. I think he was a Roman. He used to have a bedtime routine that I think can be really helpful, kind of shut your mind off and kind of make you more productive as well. So what he would do is he would meditate for a little bit. So we've talked about this, or I think we had an assignment where this could be an option for you. And I'll do this when I'm like my brain is moving too quickly and I'm trying to sleep. I'll turn on one of those like 10-minute meditation things and just try and focus on that. And a lot of times I pass out before the video even ends. You can journal. Then he would journal, right? So he would think about what did he do well that day, right? To kind of congratulate himself. And then he'd think about what he could do better. He'd make a grateful list, right? So this is the thing where we talked about with depression, right? It tends to help our overall happiness. He'd write down his long-term goals, and then he would write his to-do list for tomorrow. And I do this almost every night because it helps me stop, when you're sleeping, you're trying to think about it. And you're like, okay, I got to do this tomorrow. I got to remember to do this. Just write it down so it's off your brain, right? And then another thing that's great is naps. So 30 minutes or less, or you could go up to the 2 hours if you need. And we talked about sleep debt. So can you make up your sleep? You can actually. So if you didn't get very good sleep the night before, you could try and sleep a little bit extra the next day. That might throw off your circadian rhythm. But naps are great, especially if you take short ones. It probably won't impact your circadian rhythm too much. So that's another good skill to have. All right. So if you have questions on sleep, start asking those now. I'm going to go over a few more interesting things about sleep. And then I think we're going to move to the next topic of anxiety. So, this is really interesting. You probably don't know what this is, but this is the original table of elements. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, let me search this here. Table of elements. So this was the inspiration that created this right here, the periodic table of elements, right? So this was the inspiration. Oh, let me switch you back here. And so this was made by Mendeleev was his name. And what he did was really interesting. He actually used sleeps and napping and like dreaming as a creative tool. So remember when we talked about maybe threat reduction is, dealing with threat may have a thing to do with dreaming. When you're thinking about that, a lot of times your dreams might be trying to solve problems for you potentially. And so what he would do in his like scientific process when he's trying to organize things is he was thinking about how things are structured, and he would, I forget, there's two people who did different things, but I believe what he did was they didn't have alarms back in the day. So he would take a big metal ball in his hand. Let's just use my cup for example here. And he would sit in his chair and he'd start to fall asleep. And then he put a big metal pan below him. And what would happen is as soon as he had fallen asleep enough to where his body started going into deeper sleep and his body started to relax, he would drop the big metal ball. It would hit the pan. It would wake him up. And during one of those little like creativity nap routines that he would do, in his dream while he was sleeping, the organization of the periodic table came to him, and he wrote it down right here in his paper. So kind of an interesting way that you can use naps right there. I see questions coming in. I'm going to get to those in a second, so keep asking them. Here's another painting. Who did this painting? Let me check this real quick. He's a famous painter. What's it called? It's called something about time. Salvador Dali. So if you're interested in this, Salvador Dali, he used to do the same thing, but he would hold the keys in his hand, and he would hold these keys, and as soon as he would start to pass out, he would drop the keys, and that's how he used or aided his inspiration to do certain paintings. So some kind of really interesting ways that people actually use sleep to help them out in their different creative or scientific endeavors. All right, let's get to your questions, then we'll cover anxiety. So questions. I typically go to sleep. Oh, those are sleep hours. All right. We changed your phone. Good. What about a cat nap? Yeah, short naps are great. So 10 minutes, 5 minutes, even like resting. Sometimes in my office, I'll just lay down behind my desk and I'll just sometimes I don't even sleep. I just lay there for 20 minutes to kind of recover. It makes me feel better. Does slapping make up slack of sleep during the night? Yes, it does, right? It's not going to be the best thing in the world. Like if you slept 4 hours, napping's not going to regain all those hours, but you can catch up on sleep. So yeah, even a 10-minute nap is going to make you feel way better. So I'm a huge fan of napping. All the evidence suggests that napping is pretty good for us. Is it okay to switch up the routine a little bit for the weekend? Like an hour difference? Technically, people would say no, but, I do this anyways. It's like, especially this weekend when I was getting COVID, I did not feel good. So I slept 12 hours one night, right? And so there's times, in my opinion, to break your sleep schedule, like when you're getting sick, when you're recovering, different things like that. In an ideal world, you'd keep everything the same. But we don't live in an ideal world, and life is messy. So yeah, technically you should be waking up at the same time every day, but I think sometimes it's more important to get those extra hours of sleep, sleeping a little bit later. Great questions. Let's see here. What else? I realized I had to cut out caffeine. Oh, that's a good one. Yes. So for me, and caffeine treats everybody differently. It actually blocks the receptors of, what is it? Caffeine blocks the receptors that would make you tired, so it stops you from getting tired. Some people don't seem to be affected by this, but some people are really affected by this. And so for me, like if I drink coffee after 12, I can't sleep that night, right? And so you got to kind of figure out how that works for you. Like I train some people for marathons and stuff, and I meet them in coffee shops, and it's usually in the afternoon that I meet them. And for me, I got to get decaf when I meet them because otherwise I'll just be up all night. Do you think it would be better to try to maintain the same wake-up time on weekends, even if you're getting less sleep, staying out later? Good question. I would say it's going to vary on the individual. So if you don't have a good sleep routine and you realize that you get thrown off your sleep routine quite easily, then I would say it's probably better to stay on the sleep routine and take the loss of sleep, maybe. But if you are a person who doesn't have a hard time establishing a sleep routine, then I would say getting more sleep. So it's going to depend on the individual. If I get tired during the day and naps mess up my sleep schedule, what would you suggest? Just very short naps. If you take a 10-minute nap, because you didn't fall into any deeper cycles, I don't think that should mess up your sleep schedule. Yeah, I would just limit your nap time, right? So set an alarm and get up right away. Or maybe just laying down. I got watches that kind of track my stress levels and stuff. And sometimes, like the Garmin's called a body battery. Sometimes if I even just lay down and try and like calm down for a little bit, even if I don't go to sleep, my watch actually recognizes that as me recovering, right? And so that's a form of sleep or something like that. So even if you have to just lay down and kind of rest, that's kind of what I do. And I always just put on a podcast and kind of lay down and calm down for a minute, right? Kind of rest your brain, rest your body. So, all right. Well, that is the sleep section of our class. I think I covered everything I wanted to cover there. Let me double check here. Oh, real quick in the chat, what is one thing that you learned from today that you can do to improve your sleep schedule? And while we do that, I'm going to get to the other questions because I see a few more coming in. What is the one thing that you can do to improve your overall sleep? Let's hit that up in the chat here. Is taking melatonin bad for you, or is it worth it to get to sleep? So melatonin is interesting. I looked at a bunch of the research, and there's some that says that it might be effective. There's some that says it isn't effective. For traveling, when you get jet lag, it seems to be pretty effective. For the issue I have with melatonin, and I don't think anybody really knows what's the best. I'm certainly no expert, but the issue with melatonin is in the pill form, you're taking a ton of melatonin, right? And so when you're taking a huge amount of melatonin, I don't know, I feel like that could cause some problems with perceiving your own melatonin, right? So that's my concern with it. But if you need to take it to go to bed, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. I think it would be better to not establish a routine of taking it, right? I think it'd be better to take it only when you need it and try to train yourself to produce your own melatonin by turning down the lights. Also, when the sun is going down, if you go outside, your brain actually picks up that the sun is going down, and that can help you. For instance, when I was just living in a tent, I did it in like sometimes a vehicle, sometimes a tent for like probably 2.5 years total. My sleep schedule was so good because the sun would come up and then I would wake up and then the sun would go down, and I had, just a headlamp, so I'd have to go to bed again. And then whenever I'd move back into a building, since I had lights, I was just up till like 3 a.m. It was stupid. All right, we'll check out the comments and we'll move on, see if you have any more questions here. All right, we got night shift. Yeah, waking up same time. Consistent sleep schedule. Yeah, we're looking pretty good here. Night shift, starting a nighttime routine. Yeah, 2 to 3 hours. It seems ridiculous, but I certainly need it, and it's a good move to make. So, all right, we're looking pretty good there. Let's move on to anxiety. All right. While we're moving on to anxiety, let's hit up the chat here and let's think about what are things that make people anxious. So hit up the chat. What is one thing that tends to make certain people anxious? It can be you in particular. It can be anybody. And then we're going to talk about some anxiety here. Oh, yeah, we got some good ones in here. Nice. All right, so we're going to write this here. All right, so we're throwing things up here. Next question is, let's say you're feeling really nervous, right? So whatever that thing is that makes you super nervous, right? Explain to me how you start to feel. So just throw up in the chat all the things that you start to feel when you got that. And I'm going to read out some of these things. We got death, right? That's terrifying. Exams, schoolwork, homework, social settings, money. Yep, money's a big one. Social functions, crowds, tests. Oh, career, change. Yeah, change for everybody, really. Public speaking, we got presentations, life, good one there. All right, nice. So we got heart rate goes up. Yep, let's write these down. So we got heart rate going up. We feel out of control. Yep, okay, so decrease control. Write that over there. Oh, dizzy. Yeah, okay. Interesting, I like that one. Heart rate goes up. Oh, yep, throat tends to close up, so let's just say, I don't know, let's just say throat there. We get nervous over there. Yep, tight stomach. Some people feel it as like butterflies, if we know about that. Butterflies, what else do we have? Oh, we feel sick. Yeah, okay, especially to our stomach there. Yeah, breathing rate goes up. Oh, anger and crying. Yeah, that's a big one. There we go. Yep, sweat. Oh, yeah, we become flush, right? Face gets red. Sweat increases. We become flush. Muscles tense up. Yeah, brain fog, lack of focus. Okay, all these things are great. Stressed, we get emotional. Yeah, we get nervous, right? Okay, these are great. So, trouble focusing, irritable. Oh, yeah, these are all good. Nice. Irritable. Let's write that down. Irritable. Okay, so we have those down. Let's think about what's happening when we get stressed, right? So we go into this fight or flight mode here, right? Right here. All right, and so basically what your body is doing when you're getting stressed is it's preparing you for something important, right? So you run into a bear. It doesn't matter what else you got going on. The most important thing in your world now is dealing with this bear. And so your body tries to prepare you for a fight. We've already talked about this a little bit. One of the reasons why people get GI problems or butterflies or stomach starts to feel weird is because your body is actually shifting. It's called the sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight. It's actually starting to shift blood from your stomach out to your limbs, right? Because it's like, okay, well, you don't really need that blood flow in your stomach to digest that food. Like, you're going to have to fight this guy, right? And so it might not be a bear. It might be a speech. But your body isn't, like, super smart to be like, oh, you know. So if you're terrified of that speech, then, you know, your body's going to try to physiologically prepare you for it, right? You might start sweating. You get pit stains, all that stuff, right? And so understanding what is happening can kind of help us deal with this, right? So let's go back up to here and let's kind of break this down. So the idea is that sometimes what happens is we start to feel these things, right? We start to feel heart rate going up, okay? We start to feel dizzy maybe, right? And then feel butterflies. Our stomach doesn't feel good, right? And that makes us tend to get and then we're also feeling nervous, right? And then, you know, we're losing control. And what happens here is we get this negative feedback loop where your body starts to think, okay, heart rate's going up. You must be nervous. This situation, well, you start to get nervous, right? So your body starts to think, uh-oh, this situation is worse than we thought. Let's pump out more sympathetic nervous stimulation to help this guy out, right? But then the problem is that this gets worse. Heart rate gets worse. You know, throat starts to close up, right? You get that knot in your throat, right? And then what happens is you're like, oh, no. This is getting worse. Uh-oh. You get more nervous, right? You might start to tear up a little bit. Maybe you get a little bit shaky, right? Shaky would be over here physiologically. The problem and this is really good for athletes in particular, or anybody for a speech or anything, is trying to separate the physiology from the emotions, right? So just being aware of this, what you can do is it's called reframing. So what you're doing is you're saying, okay, you're starting to feel your heart rate go up, your sweat rate increasing. What you can tell yourself is, okay, whatever I'm about to do is important to me. And so what my body's trying to do from a physiological aspect, right, even though it's not great, you start sweating, you get a little bit shaky, right? Maybe you're trying to ask that person that you've been crushing on out, right? And then all of a sudden you're like, you get shaky, you need to go talk to them, but you don't want to make a fool of yourself, right? You can tell yourself, okay, so my physiology is preparing me for something that I feel is important, right? That makes me also nervous, right? But if you can understand how your body's feeling and separate that from the emotional aspect of it, that can kind of help you remain calm, because you get this positive feedback loop where, oh no, heart rate's going high. This is not going to go well. Your body's like, oh, this isn't going to go well. Increase sympathetic stimulation, increases heart rate more. And then you feel even worse. And then you're like, uh-oh, right? And so you get this negative or this positive feedback loop that makes you more and more and more nervous. And then what we have is right here. When that happens and it kind of gets away from some people, people end up having a complete breakdown, right? Where you got over anxious and you eventually just don't perform very well at all, right? This happens to athletes. We see it, we got the Winter Olympics going on. We can see this where people, maybe they didn't do so well and they can't brush that off, and then they come back and it just gets worse and worse and worse. It's because they start putting more and more pressure on themselves, right? So anxiety isn't always a bad thing, right? A lot of times we think about anxiety being a bad thing, but you actually need anxiety. If you have no anxiety, you're going to be bored/depressed, right? So you need some anxiety. You can think about doing homework and tests and different stuff like that. Having a little anxiety in your life helps you get things done, right? It helps you perform. So for athletes out there, and this is what I did when I was an athlete, or whether you're giving a speech or whatever it is, it's like, you start to get that feeling, that physiological feeling, the butterflies, the heart rate, breathing rate, and you can say, okay, my body's getting me prepared for this moment. So you can take solace in that, and you can say, well, this is a good thing. I just got to go out there and perform because what I'm about to do is important to me, right? If you have an athlete who's not really focused and not feeling a little anxious, they're typically not going to perform very well because they're not going to have that physiological stimulation to actually perform well, right? But then if we let that overcome ourselves, we get into that complete meltdown phase where we don't do well. So there's an optimal level of anxiety, and learning how to control that can be really healthy for us. So, oh yeah, that's a good thing. I see in the comments, caffeine. Same with me. Before I really started drinking it a lot, caffeine would make me very nervous. So like caffeine kind of increases everything a little bit. So for some of you, caffeine might make you anxious. Once I started drinking it routinely, which is like a year and a half ago. That's gone away a little bit. But if I drink like a lot, like if I go to a place and buy a big coffee, yeah, I'll get a little bit shaky after I drink coffee. So, oh, we got a recommendation, the Weight of Gold documentary. I assume they're talking about that anxiety there. So I like that. Oh, zoning out. Yeah, sometimes you can like start to try to disassociate with that anxiety. So, all right, good stuff, good stuff. Let me see where we're at here. Let's do a quick thing. So when you do realize you're going into this, remember when we talked about panic attacks, right? When you're starting to go into this strong anxiety, you can try to get outside of your brain, right? And that's where you start to identify 5 things you can see, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can touch, 2 things you can smell, and then 1 thing you can taste, right? So that's trying to get you out of your head, especially in social situations. That's a really good thing. But there are some other activities that we can actually do. So if you think about your nervous system, we have this nerve. It's called the vagus nerve, and it actually goes down. This is a picture of it. It's up near our eyes as well. But it goes actually under our aortic arch right here. Fun fact, in giraffes, because giraffes' necks slowly grew longer and longer, the vagus nerve is super long, right? It goes all the way from their head, all the way down to their heart, and then all the way back up to their larynx. And this is why people might feel their throat closing up, or that knot in your throat, right? It's because this is your vagus nerve. And when you start to get nervous, it can stimulate this, and it can kind of activate your throat muscles to feel that like that knot, right? So the vagus nerve also goes down into your stomach, into all of your organs. So that's kind of why you might feel that blood flow leaving, right? Because this system controls all of that stuff. It's kind of crazy. So we can do some things to try to relax our vagus nerve. So what we're going to do first is, what I want you to do is you can just kind of pull your head down like this. And then what you're doing is you're stretching that vagus nerve in there. And then also look up towards the ceiling, because the vagus nerves go into your eyes as well. So you can kind of pull your head sideways there and just kind of relax into this. We'd be doing this in the classroom usually, but we're online, so that's all right. And you do this for about 30 seconds or as long as you want. This is the thing I do when I'm feeling a little nervous. And what it does is it kind of helps relax that vagus nerve. So you're kind of like impacting your body, like the physiology of your body, right? So we talked reframing. That's kind of like the mental aspect of like, hey, yeah, I'm nervous. It's okay to be a little bit nervous, right? My body's trying to get me ready. This is more like impacting your physiology a little bit. So you can do the other side. It feels pretty good. Yeah. So we're going to do that for a second. Kind of relax. It's really interesting if you have a heart rate monitor on. You can actually watch your heart rate drop when we do this stuff, because the vagus nerve also helps stimulate your heart rate response. So that's kind of a fun little thing to do. Let's do another one here. So we've heard of deep breathing before, right? To calm yourself down. That is partially true. The important part of deep breathing is actually a slow exhale. So some people, you can do it a particular way called a physiological sigh. So physiological sigh means you do 2 inhales. So what that looks like is a and then you kind of increase your lung capacity, and then you slowly exhale. So I'm exhaling right now. Slowly exhale. You can practice this yourself as well. Slowly exhale. And when you're slowly exhaling, I'm still exhaling as I'm talking here. What you're doing is you're slowly decreasing your chest cavity, right? And when you decrease your chest cavity, okay, that was a long exhale. When you decrease that chest cavity, what you're doing is you're sending feedback to your vagus nervous system to calm itself down. And so by taking that inhale, maybe a 2 double inhale, the physiological sigh. So, and then a slow exhale. So just keep slowly exhaling as you go. You're decreasing the chest cavity. You're decreasing the area with which your heart lives in, and that'll actually help decrease your heart rate. Let's see if I can get my heart rate to go down by doing this. So I'm still exhaling. So the slow breathing, the important thing is the slowness of the breath, right? Slowly exhaling the breath. When you're inhaling, you're actually stimulating the vagus nerve, which can actually increase the heart rate. So kind of another really interesting thing that you can do. Let's say you need to focus, right? You're not working, like you need to do some work and you're having a hard time focusing on that work. What you can do to kind of do the opposite of the slow exhale to calm yourself down is you can actually hype yourself up. And hype yourself up, what you do is you take like 30 quick, deep, fast breaths. So you go. Now you got to be careful because you can pass out when you're doing that, right? But if you do that, what you'll notice, you don't do it around water, obviously. You don't do it around sharp objects where you can fall. Sitting down is probably the best. But what you're doing is you're actually hyping up your nervous system. And so you can use that to help yourself focus. So let's see what happened. Oh, so I just did that fast breathing. My heart rate jumped 15 beats right there, right? So you can use your breath to impact all kinds of systems in your body. So, all right, we're going to talk about some more of those things. Another thing that you can do to help with this anxiety is we talked about this a little bit with the mice, is explored versus unexplored territory, right? So we talked about this with phobias as well. So if there's something that terrifies you, voluntarily doing that thing and getting used to that thing will really help you become accustomed to that thing. So if we look at personality tests, we'll do one later this semester when we get to the relationship section. Some people have just a higher level of anxiety, right? So I'm one of those people. I have a little bit higher level of anxiety than your average person. And so these little techniques are going to be even more important for you, right? So exposing yourself, becoming competent at different things, right? So when I first started teaching, lots of anxiety. As I've got used to it, right? Public speaking and preparing for class, now it's more exciting. And that's one of the things you might notice here as well, is that a lot of the things that people get nervous about are also things that people get excited about, right? So like, I don't know, what were our examples up here? Let's see if I can go. Well, most people don't get excited about tests, right? World government affairs, right? That gets people sometimes very anxious, right? For me, I just love that stuff. I love reading it. It's just great stuff. Job interviews, same thing. People get terrified of those. But after you get through enough of them, you might actually get excited because you might get a great opportunity, right? Same with career, right? So you get the idea. So once you become competent at something, like let's say it's competing, you might still get nervous, but you can turn that anxiety that you feel. This is, again, back to that reframing up here. That anxiety, that nervousness that you feel, you can turn that and say, well, if I was really good at this thing, I might actually be getting excited because excitement is the same sympathetic nervous system. So it's a good way to reframe that nervousness is you can say, well, of course I'm nervous, but this could also be perceived as excitement. And your body does the same stuff when you're excited. Heart rate goes up, sweat rate, breathing rate, all those things go up when you're excited. So another good way to reframe that. All right. Let's talk about, what do we want to talk about? We're going to do this in our notebooks. We're going to do another notebook activity. So what I want you to do is get your notebooks out. And there's this idea. We need a pencil here. So we talked about FOMO. I think we talked about FOMO. You got to be aware of this in investing. People start buying something like, who knows, Dogecoin, AMC, GameStop, and all good stuff, right? Fun stuff. But people get FOMO. They think fear of missing out. They're like, oh, now price is going up. I'm going to lose my opportunity to get this. You never want to be investing when you have that feeling, right? FOMO, that's anxiety, right? Typically, we're not making great decisions when we're anxious. So that's FOMO. We have this other idea called FOPO, and this makes us anxious as well. So FOPO is fear of other people's opinions. So I know when I was on social media, I'd make a post, and then all of a sudden, like a day later, I'm like, oh, you're stupid. And then I get anxiety with that, right? Because it's like, oh, I don't know, just a thing. It's called external validation, right? Sometimes we're looking for other people to make us feel good. And, now that I'm older, I see this all the time on social media, people posting things on social media that they think other people want them to post, right? So you got to be aware of this. You don't want to be living your life through social media so other people think you're cool or acceptable or whatever, right? So with FOPO, this fear of other people's opinions, what we want to do is write down the name of 6 people whose opinions actually matter to you, right? So I would say my roommate, right? What he thinks about how I'm living is important to me, right? So he's a pretty good person. Let's see, who's another friend of mine? Let's see, my mom, she's a person whose opinion I value. So you want to write down 6 people whose opinions actually matter of you. And I'll tell you how you're going to use that. So let's start writing those people down. Let's say my dad's opinion of me matters. My sister's opinion matters. And then I got a few friends. Yeah, I'll just put my friends there. But since you're doing this anonymously, I want you to actually write some names to those people, right? So you have those names down. All right, so we're thinking about people whose opinions actually matter. And what you can do with this is whenever you're encountering an experience that makes you anxious or, has anxiety in it, you can think about, and this is really good for like newer things. Like let's say you're trying to, like for me when I was learning to get some dancing skills, right? Like some partner dance stuff, lots of anxiety, right? And it was like, well, okay, yeah, I might look stupid, especially when I'm starting. But, if I think like, is my mom going to be thinking that it's a stupid thing to try to get some skills? Is my dad going to be thinking that's a stupid thing to get some skills? No, these people are probably going to be supportive of me, right? Some of my friends, like right here, they might make fun of me a little bit, but that's, all in good fun. They're not going to actually be tearing me down, right? So the idea is if you know those people and you have them written down, whenever you're going to do something new that makes you nervous, you can think about, how would those people feel rather than, the mob or the crowd on social media, right? Because, that can be a lot of stress that people have to live with that social media stuff going on. So write those names down. I'm not going to make you share those, obviously. Let's go on to the next thing. We got generalized anxiety. So this, sometimes people just have a disorder, right? Similar to depression, and they get generalized anxiety disorder. So let's check these things out. And in the chat, what I want you to do is, and you don't want to self-diagnose yourself. We got to watch out for that, right? But let's just say, what do you experience when you're just feeling generalized anxiety? So everybody's felt it at some point. Which one of these bullet points here do you tend to feel when you're when you feel general anxiety? This doesn't mean you have a disorder, but sometimes people do. So, for instance, and as we throw this up, I'll just keep talking here. So, it needs to be for more days than not in a week. That means 4 more days for at least 6 months. And I had this for sure after grad school, and maybe more recently as well. Individual finds it difficult to control the worry. So that's a real thing, right? That's where that cognitive behavioral therapy can really come into account, or really come into effect and really help you out there. Or anxiety and worry associated with 3 of these symptoms. And so you're mostly looking at these symptoms. Do you ever feel any of those? You ever get irritability, muscle tension? Yep, that's a big one. We got being easily fatigued there, restlessness. Yeah, so everybody's going to experience some of these. Again, you don't diagnose yourself, but if you do experience generalized anxiety disorder, sleep issues is a big one. And then the problem is that a lack of sleep also doesn't help us decrease our anxiety, actually increases our anxiety. So you get these negative feedback loops where you're nervous, so you can't sleep, or you have anxiety, so you can't sleep. But then the anxiety interrupts your sleep, and then the sleep makes your anxiety worse, and you just get into some bad rhythms, right? So, these are good things to watch out for. And you can get medication for this, right? So there's no shame in getting some medication, or you can get therapy like cognitive behavioral therapy that'll help you gain control, right? So difficulty controlling that worry, you can actually gain mental skills to actually control that worry. So that's kind of a good skill to have. One of the things that people can do, actually, let's practice this real quick. We got 15 minutes left. Let's practice this over here. So they're called bridge statements. So sometimes we don't feel very good. Actually, you know what? We're going to wait for bridge statements. That fits really well into our next class session, which will be in person. So we're going to hold up on those bridge statements. All right, nice. We're throwing in all those things that we feel. So, if you do struggle with this, and at some point in your life you probably will, not a terrible thing to go get some help with that, right? It can be medication, it can be cognitive skills, whatever it is. Okay, let's look at the, can I get both of these? I can only get one on the screen, it looks like. All right, so here's a survey of past year. So over the last year, this was older, but I couldn't find any newer. Anxiety disorders are way up, especially with all the COVID stuff, right? Lockdowns plus COVID makes people anxious. You're not socializing with people. So prevalence among U.S. adults, right? So we got females, we got males. It appears that females do tend to experience more anxiety than men. The personality data would kind of match that, right? So me as a male, I tend to be more towards the female personality type for anxiety, right? Men and women are more same than different. We'll talk more about personality traits there. And as you see in the younger cohorts, whatever that word is, it's higher, and as you get older, it tends to go down. So we can see it's quite high, though, right? About 20% at least of the people over the last year experienced an anxiety disorder. It could be way higher than that, right? If we look at young people, it's even higher, right? So we can see that right there. This is 13 through 14, 17 through 18. About 30% of people are experiencing anxiety disorders, and that's way, way up, right? I forget, maybe like threefold up. It's just skyrocketed, right? And here we have the same thing. One of the reasons is social media potentially for this. So there's been some studies on social media, and what they found was that women tend to compare themselves a little bit more. There's a little bit more social comparison on social media amongst women than amongst men. I'm trying to draw an up arrow there. So that may be one of the reasons we see it higher in women. It can also be because of those personality differences, right? Even I experience this, so I'm not saying that, if you're male, you don't experience these, because you certainly do. I certainly do. So kind of interesting. But yeah, we got lots of anxiety issues. Learning to calm yourself down can be a good skill to have, right? Whether it's medication or whatever you need there. So another skill. Let's go back to this vagus nerve, and then we'll talk about some other things here. So the vagus nerve right here, it actually goes into your eyes. And one of the things that you can do, has anybody ever had tunnel vision? Let's hit up the chat. Has anybody ever had tunnel vision? We understand what that is. Tunnel vision, you kind of like everything around becomes blurry and you become singularly focused. This can help you during a competition, but it's not great if you're trying to give a speech sometimes, right? Because you might not be taking into account other things, and it can cause more fear, more anxiety, right? What you can do is this thing called eye softening. And so what eye softening is you're trying to activate your nervous system to take in more of your periphery, right? Which means you're going to be stimulating your parasympathetic nervous system, which can kind of help calm you down. It's also called rest and digest, right? Where that blood flow goes back to the stomach. And so how you do eye softening, and you can do this right now. Yeah, it sucks, right? Try to focus on your periphery. So the way I do this is I put my hands out here, and I try to see my hands, and I try to see how far back I can see my hands, right? So if you're in tunnel vision, you wouldn't be able to see your hands right now. Where I'm at right now, I can see my hands. And what tends to happen is you kind of start to daze off, right? So you might know somebody who tends to daydream. That's kind of like an eye softening thing where you're not really focusing. You're just kind of relaxing your eye musculature and just focusing on your surroundings and seeing how far out you can see your hands. So let's give that a try. That's another way you can actually reduce your overall anxiety. We got one more skill. I'll talk about that one right at the end. But there you go. That's eye softening. Hopefully you check that out. Try it out. That's another skill you can use if you that's a good one to use if you're in class and you got a speech coming up and you don't want to draw attention to yourself. Just try to start seeing how far out you can see the students around you and just trying to activate that periphery, right? That'll help you there. So, all right. Let's talk about some other anxiety disorders. We got panic attacks, right? We've talked about that a little bit, how you can work through those. Everybody's going to be a little bit different. We also have PTSD. We talked about this when we were earlier this class, right? It can be a very hard thing to deal with. If you are struggling, if there is a traumatic event that happened 18 months prior and you're still dealing with that, you should go get some therapy for that, right? Because that can, assuming you can find a good therapist, because that'll really help you out. And then we also have like an OCD, right? So you got to be careful. You don't diagnose yourself. But nobody really knows what causes OCD. But it is an anxiety disorder. The idea is people tend to feel this anxiety if they don't do something, right? And this can be performing rituals like turning light switches on and off. If it consumes over 1 hour of your day, then that's where you get a problem, right? Because that starts to impact your life. And so people can go and get help for that as well. So, all right, and then we got phobias. We've talked about all these before because lots of things are crossing over. Another thing we can do to reduce our anxiety is we can do a nice big yawn. Right, so let's do some yawns here. A lot of times what happens when you see me yawn is that you're going to yawn, which is a really interesting thing. There's been some studies done in wild dogs, and people think it's like an evolutionary thing to try to calm down like a pack animal. So these dogs, what happens is when one starts to yawn, they all start to yawn. And so it's this idea of like, if a pack of animals gets too anxious, they might start to act out in ways that's destructive for the pack of animals. And so, when you're feeling that anxiety, sometimes one of the things that might happen is you might want to yawn, and what you're actually doing is potentially affecting that sympathetic nervous system or that vagus nerve to try to calm itself down. And then it can spread through that group of animals, right? Which is a really interesting thing. So give yourself a yawn real quick. And we got one more, but let's look at some anxiety. Here's a good graph. This is looking at anxiety after sleep deprivation. So remember, sleep deprivation is sleeping 6 hours or less. So if you only got 6 hours of sleep, your anxiety is going to be way higher the next day, right? After full night of sleep, lower anxiety. So sleep, super, super effective for reducing anxiety. I had another sheet here that I was supposed to show you. Where did it go? It's not on here. Here it is. All right, so now we're going to talk about things we can do to help reduce our anxiety. And so you might want to make a list down here. And then we're going to type out what's one thing that you can do to help reduce your anxiety. We've talked about a few of these, like little techniques. But here we go. Let's full screen this if we can. Full screen. Oh, that's not what I needed. All right, we're going to have to view it this way for whatever reason. Hopefully you can see that all right. So some things to deal with stress: limit caffeine and alcohol. Alcohol can actually increase anxiety. Kind of interesting. One drink tends to decrease anxiety. Multiple drinks can increase it long term, right? Not in the moment that you're drinking, but long term overall, right? So alcohol, this is why people drink, right? Because alcohol actually reduces anxiety. But it might be good to learn how to go to a party and reduce your anxiety without alcohol. Might be a good skill to have. Well-balanced meals. This is really interesting. So let's say you're skipping breakfast. And we'll talk about eating, timing, all that stuff. But if you skip breakfast and let's say your blood sugar starts to get low, low blood sugar can actually cause anxiety for some people. So like I know I can get this a little bit. If I haven't eaten for a while, I get a little bit shaky. And it might not be just... that might not be anxiety, but we do know that low blood sugar can lead to anxiety. So sometimes just eating a little bit can really help, particularly things that don't spike your blood sugar, like protein or fats. So like cheese would be an example, or like some jerky, or who knows what it is. But just eating a little something, maybe like apple and peanut butter, so you get a little bit more balance with that apple. That can kind of help ease some anxiety. So well-balanced meals, that's a good one. Sleep, we've talked about that. Exercise. We haven't talked about exercise yet. So really interesting, that sympathetic nervous system that triggers our anxiety, that same nervous system is what we trigger when we start to exercise. So the thing that increases your breathing rate during exercise, increases your heart rate during exercise, increases your sweat rate during exercise, that's the same system. And so if you're not exercising routinely, it's highly likely that you're going to have some type of anxiety because your body has to activate that system, and it's healthy for you, right? And so it's not healthy if you're just sitting around anxious all the time. But if you go and get some exercise with it, it can be really helpful. So that's a good thing to know. And so whenever I'm feeling anxious, there's a few things I go through. It's the same as depression, actually. And anxiety and depression can kind of be linked pretty closely. It's like, okay, well, I'm not feeling very good or I'm feeling anxious. Like, well, 1, I got to exercise. 2, I got to hang out with people. 3, I got to make sure I'm eating pretty well. What else is there? 4, I got to be sleeping, right? So you got to start checking off those boxes when you're feeling anxiety to try to help you out long term. And then you have some cognitive things you can do, like you can't control everything. That's a tough one to deal with. Just understanding that and becoming more competent, and maybe just understanding that maybe you have a little bit higher preset for anxiety. Like that's kind of how I am. And so it's like, okay, I'm going to feel some negative emotion or some anxiety fairly frequently. So I just got to understand that that's okay and that I feel it and we're just going to deal with it, right? Positive attitude, triggering your anxiety. Let's see, what else do we have? Relationships. We're social creatures, so you got to make sure you're hanging out with people. If you're not and you're isolating, that's one of the issues with lockdowns, right? That can increase your anxiety. On the flip side, people get anxiety because there's a virus out there, right? So some of the issues with the COVID thing. But again, if you're struggling with this, you can also get therapy and medication. So there's a bunch of things that I just listed that you can do. Let's hit up the chat. What's one thing you can do to reduce your anxiety? Whether it was the exercises we did in class or whether it's something here you can do like exercise or sleep. What's one thing that you're missing that you could add to help you with your anxiety whenever it arises? Whether it's a performance, it could be reframing as well, right? That idea of separating the mental aspect from the physical aspect. Hit up the chat with one thing you can do to try to reduce your anxiety. Again, we got meditation, we got therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy in particular. Nice. All right, we got caffeine there. Yeah, watch out for that. Balanced meals, exercise. Like even high blood sugar, that could potentially cause anxiety. So working out, working out's huge. Yoga, meditation, great stuff. Journaling even you could throw in there. We had that opportunity for that cognitive behavioral therapy. It's like journaling when you're not feeling so well and trying to find what triggers that. Oh yeah, going for a walk is a great one. I do that one quite a bit when I need it. Working out. Sometimes lifting can actually increase anxiety. But that could be short term. So you kind of got to know who you are, how you react to different things. All right. We're getting all those down. We're getting to the end today. So, one more thing I'm going to just talk about is this week we have due on Thursday this eating assignment where you're going to take small bits of food and you're just going to notice a bunch of things about them. It's called mindful eating, right? The next section, we're about to talk about how to change our body composition. So losing fat mass, building muscle, all these important things to maintain our health. But first, we got to talk about our mentality around eating because people struggle with this. Eating actually causes an anxiety response in a lot of people, right? And so we need to address this. It can cause binge eating. It can cause the flip side like bulimia or anorexia. So we're going to address it in the next class. We're going to start talking about body composition, how you can change this and how you can modulate it. Essentially what I'm going to be doing is giving you some powerful tools that you can use. And then we need to learn how to use those tools responsibly, right? And so this eating assignment is really interesting because what they found was it really helped people understand what foods they tend to binge on and what they actually like and what they don't like. So we're going to try it out. I've never done this activity before, so we're going to see what you think about it. So when we get back in class on Monday, I'll ask you what your thoughts are. So, all right. Well, we're at the end of class. If you have any questions, you can stick around and I'll answer those about sleep, anxiety, whatever you have, investing. I'll be chilling here till the stream ends. Thank you for being here. We'll be back to normal on Monday, and have a good weekend. And again, I'll just keep talking while we're here. So if you do have any questions on anything we've covered or other things that we're going to cover, feel free to stick around. Otherwise, have a good one, and I'll get your grades in. Oh, yeah, thank you, everybody. We will be back to normal soon. We got a question coming in. Why do some people get tired after eating a lot of carbs? Well, one thing is you get into your rest or digest phase, right? So that tends to calm the body down, so that can cause sleep. Also depends what you eat. Tryptophan, which is in turkey, can make people sleepy. So that's a thing. Also, though, let's say blood sugar spikes when you eat. And we're going to learn about this, but blood sugar spikes when you eat. Blood sugar spikes when you eat. There we go. And then it starts to drop back down. And when it drops back down, because insulin releases, that drop in blood sugar might make people feel a little lethargic. I believe that's the reason, but it is a real thing, right? So we'll talk more about that, and I'm gonna look more into that one specifically. So good question there. All right, thank you, everybody. Same thing, if you have any questions on anything, feel free to stick around. Other than that, you're free to go. But yeah, fairly normal for people to get sleepy after they've eaten something. That's why that afternoon nap can be kind of nice. And it seems like some of us were really lagging in here, so I'm just going to keep hanging out. Till we get through everything. All right, let's move. Oh, did I forget to? Oh no, we're good. Okay. All right, I'm gonna start getting our attendance here. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to hit that up. All right, we're all done. So we are gonna end the stream, and I'll see you all back in class on Monday.